Ну что ж, еще раз приветствую.
Once again, greetings to all those who are with us. We are back to the streaming, and it's block number 3. We are going to talk about the representation of diversity of disability in culture and art, media, and so on. And now I would like to give the floor to the researcher of the disability, to Mrs. Rakhat Orozova, who is going to talk about the representation of disability in the children literature. Good evening, dear colleagues. I'm pleased to greet you here from Bishkek, from Kyrgyzstan. My name is Rakhat Orozova. I would describe the background. I'm the middle-aged woman. I'm quite plump. I have a short hair, my short, thick hair. I have quite such clothes which can hide my forms, and it's in the black, white, and red colors. And when we conduct inclusive events, we are used to describing ourselves and what we show on our slides. First of all, I would like to express the gratitude for having us here, for inviting us. It's really nice to represent Central Asia countries here. We have our own experience, and I would like to thank you for organizing this event and this beautiful library. I'm walking around it every day, all the day today, and I see so many people, so many children who are looking at the books, and I see that they are not participants of the conference. Thank you very much for this. Today, in my presentation, I'm going to tell about the children literature. That's why on the first slide, I'm showing several covers of the books that will be the part of my presentation. That's why now I will not describe them. The presentation gives answers to several questions. So now the needed slide. So several questions. Why it's important for us to study how the literature is represented in books and in pictures, and we need to show why these pictures were chosen. And the second is how we try to classify the books and the pictures. And the third, I will tell about the results of the experience very briefly, on how we train the children from 5 to 10, the children with a disability, and how it was added to the books, to the children books through images. It's really relevant for Kyrgyzstan. We had very few books in Kyrgyz language, and donors helped us, and we launched this process of publishing such books. And one of the main problems is including gender, race, inclusivity, and sexual orientation. So I would like to show you one of the examples from our book. I has chosen a book about dementia. It's available online. Under each slide, I'm giving the link where you can download the book or the material that I'm referring to. And what's interesting, this book is called Home to Remember. And it was developed by the order of the developer, which is promoting in Great Britain the houses which were designed for the people with the moral disabilities, and to promote these new models of such homes, they decided that they needed to educate children at schools, and the parents are going to tell their children about this, and they say that our homes will be successfully sold after this. And the book is based on the true events and the true experience, so they have constructed such home for the couple, Sally and Priscilla, and this book was provided in the libraries of Great Britain. I will not tell a lot about the book now, because I will give the details on the next slides. So the first page, there is a white home on the blue background. The coloring is very important, and there, next to the entrance, there is a grandmother with her grandson. Such very, very nice, naive illustrations, and the child tells that this is him and his grandmother, and they live at the entrance to the house where they were very happy, and they don't want to leave it. So the next picture shows there is the fridge and the washing machine, and the boy is doesn't understand why there is a banana in the washing machine and the glasses in the fridge. And the text says that the grandmother is very happy to live in her house, but sometimes she forgets something and she doesn't remember where she puts her things. You can see that the color gets darker. It gets dark blue or even violet. Next, boy says, my mom says that what happens to our grandmother is dementia. This is the disease that affects her brain, and sometimes that gets her embarrassed and she gets a little bit lost. But we want to help her very much, so their family wants to help her. That's why we decided to change something about the home so that she can feel comfortable. The first thing what we did is the grandfather, our father decided to demolish several walls to make the living room bigger, and you can see here the picture of how they were doing it. So they're demolishing the wall between the bathroom and the living room, and here the text says now the grandmother can see where the toilet is and she will not get lost. So here's the text says when she has the needs to some physical needs that she has, she will not forget where to do this. At the next picture, there is a grandmother behind the window itself, and father and son wash this window, and you see that there is a quite light background, light blue window, the green grass, and the yellow and orange clothes on the child, and so now we wash the windows, and the grandmother can see when it gets dark. She will understand that she will go to bed because she gets tired, not understanding that there is day and night. She forgets to drink her meds, so that the natural lighting can help her to understand the part of the day. The next illustration, mother and dad are painting the walls with the yellow painting, and there is a further text. Later, I helped my mom to paint the walls with the special bright colors, which will allow our grandmother to feel happy and comfortable. So the next picture, the one that we had on the cover, so there's a wonderful white house in the British style, the orange background, and there is a path in the light blue color. So it's like for a couple of meters outside the house, and there are the holding ramps which can be used by grandmother, and you can see that there are trees and birds, butterflies, and etc. So we established banisters through and the pathway to the garden so that our grandmother can use them to go out to the fresh air. The next picture, so grandmother meets the family in her house. Everything is in a yellow, orange, white, and blue colors, and the grandson is next to his grandma, and he sees that we see that the grandma is smiling, so she's reacting to her grandson. When everything was finalized, we showed our grandma her new house. We love visiting our grandma, and we hope that she will live in her house for a very, very long time. So here they're sitting at the table with all the family. So this is the plot. It may sound simple, and they want to keep their grandma at home, not to send her to some institution. And it is taught here in the simple language where the illustrations bring the idea, bring the sense. And these illustrations tell us something, just like the text. The text explains us its point, and the illustrations explain their own idea. In the next slide, you can see all the illustrations so that you can see the change of the color. First, these were some cold colors. Soon they move into green and to some tender colors. And here we come to the climax. It's the orange color, and further the illustrations are in the brighter colors. So first the boy didn't know what dementia is, and he was worried about the things that were happening to his grandma, that she started losing her functions. But later the parents start explaining, and they start changing the environment, not the person, but the environment. And later we discuss with children what they know about the dementia. Do they have any people whom they know, how to not stigmatize this disease, and etc. And then on the next slide you can see the real pictures of this home, that was described in the book. If we show all these homes to the children, they will not understand what it's about. And here it's shown that the natural lighting is very important for the person, and the furniture is comfortable, the tone of the color of walls, and the so wide windows, so everything what is needed for the person who needs special conditions. And this book gives a significant idea, not only the marketing role. This book tells about that institutionalization of these people, putting them into the private clinics or hiring the assistants who can look after their relatives for 24 hours a day, or sometimes even the relatives, the family members, they give up their job, leave their job to take care of the elderly people who have dementia. These all are very costly services, and the families have to take loans to work a lot so that the relatives may have high quality life. Through this book, it's explained to the people, to the society, if we make a step forward to these people and we do not pull them out of the shops, do not think that they are psychologically ill or something like this, and to make them think to argue with them if they defecate uncontrollably. So this how we can change the persuasion by the people and by the children of such problems. There are many of such books, but unfortunately they all are in English language, and now we try to train our authors and illustrators so that they can create different books in Kyrgyz language. We have also Uzbek and Tajik communities. We ask embassies to support us with that, but because in your countries you do not have these books too. That's why it's very important for us to promote this idea. Now I will tell why we are doing the research. The case is that many projects, programs, and the pedagogical society was a bit against books that will tell about the disability. They say that's the negative experience. Why children at their age need to know about this? Why to scare them? Why to make them be afraid? And it will after project to their attitude to those people. And we try to explain to our population, to the professional community that we need to see. Let us see how they're going to react. Let us try to test this. And first of all, we decided to understand how this literature is being promoted in other countries, and we tried to understand how it's being explained. And we learned that disability is the experience of humanity. It used to be, and it exists today. According to WHO, around 20% of population all over the world has a different extent of disability. And we realized that the disability studies is not new. It started in 1970s, when the gender, feminism, and inclusivity issues started developing. And we saw that the scientific research on disability, there is the sub area which is called literary disability studies. And literary disability studies, it may be translated a bit difficult into Russian, but with English it sounds simple. And this science or sub-area looks into several directions, how the disability is represented in literature, and the second, which is linked to the first one, and how what's the attitude of people to the disability after reading the books. And we found that today there are 5 approaches. You can see them on this slide. I will read them, and later I will give more details about these approaches. I apologize for giving so much information. That's complicated terminology, but I think if you get involved into it, you will discover the incredible space for yourself. The critiques of the negative image, historical revisionism, social realism, transgressive resignification, and biographical criticism. Below you can see the authors who give the good description of these approaches in the national literature. They all are from foreign countries. I want the names of our compatriots be here too. What's the critics of the negative image? The case is that the literature is the mirror of the reality of the society. It's where we see how diverse the community is, and as our colleagues emphasized, usually the image of people with disability has the negative image, and here it's assessed how the stereotypes are widespread in literature and how to get rid of this, because literature, as Nadia mentioned, literature is quite powerful means of impacting the society. And there are three categories here which are usually described in the literature. This marginalization of disability, when disability is demonstrated as punishment and burden and helplessness, adaptation of disability or difficult process of adapting to life into the mainstream or into the society. It's isolation and a hierarchy, and disability as dysfunction. It's the limits in the life activity and opportunities in life. And we came to the conclusion that these categories are outdated, because at the beginning of this millennia, they were many new researches and books appeared. Famous researcher Karl Barnes, he identifies 12 images. I will not read them because I guess many of you are aware of them. You have the presentation in hands. But if you just Google Barnes 12 images, you will see the text where each of these images is unpacked. And here I wanted to say that in art and in the culture in general, these images are so spread that we perceive them not like this. That we understand that there is A, disability, and B, dysfunctionality. And this my favorite painter, Bruegel. You can see it's he dedicated many paintings to the visually impaired people. You see that there are people with different levels of visual impairment, and they're going to the cave in the ground, and the picture isn't that if the person doesn't believe in God, then the person goes to the cave, which means to hell. But if the person is a believer, then he or she can see. And the other picture, it's called People with Disabilities, and you can see that they are untidy, they are unhappy, and they have bad clothes. And I can see this picture here in the library. It's in the book. And you can see other images on the slide. It's the representation of the negative images. These are the gnomes. And I even read the research that the parents who had the children with dwarfism under the impact of those works, they tried to get rid of those children. Why? Because they thought that this is the reality. This image is a reality. Like such people live in isolation as dwarfs. They are separated. They are not complete human. They are evil. They are not pleased with life, and they cannot have family, and they cannot get into life completely. Another picture shows the pirate who doesn't have one leg. He has a prosthesis. And if you look on the face, you see the aggression and anger. So this approach of having the criticism of the negative image, it's quite relevant, and because when we ask the authors to write some book about disability, the first reaction that the human has, the person who is not aware, who doesn't have any contact, it's depicting the person who is angry and who is sad, or etc. So the next approach, which is being used by the researchers, this is social realism, which describes the true image of disabled people. Here you can see three books that characterize this approach. So here you can see covers of the books. It's the country of blind. Which shows that the disability is not compliance with the norm, but when the person who can see gets to the country of the blind people, can understand how it happens to be excluded of the society. And if you read this book, so the people living in that city, they said, if you have something on your face that you doesn't like, and it just moves somehow, we can delete it.
And two more books that I'm in love with. We use them on book therapy together with parents who had children with Down syndrome. It's a book by Clara Dupont-Monod. It's a story about 4 siblings, and one of them has a disability, and some of the siblings hates poor boy. Somebody supports Billy and perceives him as a full-fledged member of the family, but eventually he dies. The new baby is born, and anyway, this problem is reflected on this baby. Next book is called Murena. It's about a boy who had both his arms amputated, and here the book illustrates his way, how he's adapting in his life, in his society, when society suggests him to use the prostheses. They are heavy, they are not comfortable, and then eventually the man decides that he doesn't want to use the prosthesis. He can do his daily routine using his legs, even though it's not really aesthetic. Well, these books, they are forming the image of a person with disability through media. Let's speak about historical revisionism. Its name, the name itself tells us a lot, that we are reviewing the way we perceive a person with disability. Some people believe that those books are rather negative than positive, impacting. But here, one thing is pretty clear, that we see how at a particular time frame people would treat other people with disabilities, which is of course a kind of lesson learned. 3 books. One of them is available in Russian. It's Peer Valley. It's called Pierce Valley. Have you read it? It's available on the internet. It tells us about children's experience in specialized institutions. It's of course a Soviet time in Georgia, how they are trying to escape from this institution. Another book by famous activist Judith Heumann. This book tells us about her struggles for Article 504 for reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities in public schools. Through this book, we are telling children about historical momentum about people with disabilities. Then another book is about how parents used X-ray on their child, which eventually became a cancer, and how this boy again with disability is adapting to entire world. Another book is Life plus Art of Judith and Scott, where one of the sisters had Down syndrome. In one family there were two daughters, one is healthy, another with Down syndrome, and up to 6 years old parents would believe that the girl doesn't need any specialized care, and after that teachers and specialists would convince the parents that they need to send the sister to specialized institution. Then her sister is very sad about this, and the parents didn't explain the healthy sister that it's okay to send sister to specialized institution, and after some time she found her sister in this institution. She brought her home, she applied art therapy, and then it was interestingly that the girl with Down syndrome really was longing for her family, for her parents, and she enjoyed spinning threads around things. You can see some of her masterpiece here. It would really demonstrate her need for attachment, and then we got to know that her pieces, they worth as much as $20,000. And anyway, there is a long story behind this masterpiece. It's about how people would be kept in specialized institutions back in 60s. The next book is not directly related to disability, but it's about historical revisionism. The book is called Flower Granny. It's available in Korean. Last year it became very popular, and I believe Americans will translate it into Kyrgyz. I wanted to say to Kyrgyz, but into English. It's a very sad story, actually, about how women in South Korea be claimed as a in wartime they were sent to Japanese concentration camps where they experienced sexual harassment. When they came back home after war, they were not claimed as the victims of the war. They couldn't get back to their families. They were not claiming any financial compensation. They were just very much stigmatized because they experienced sexual violence. You can see in the upper picture, you can see Korean ladies. They are starving to death. Some of them are pregnant. They've raped. And in other pictures you can see they are going on strike, they are crying, they are striving for equality. And this is the daughter, one of such ladies, and she created this book. The book was made of dried herbs and flowers. You can see where the soldiers take the ladies, they try to rape them. They actually rape them, and it's all happening in Uganda. You again can see the power of the color, where the soldiers are depicted in brown, and on the right you can see their granddaughters who would support their grandmas. And then the leadership of Japan really claimed them as the victims of the war. There were some political commitments. Well, anyway, the book became a strong political tool. It's not just retelling the story. It was a nice therapy for women, for the victims. Somehow it's mitigated their pain. The next approach is biographical criticism, where impaired people tell their stories in the books. It's not about telling the society about their experience. It's an attempt to show that this is more powerful rather than some fiction books. I really love these books, and one of them is Haben Girma. She is blind, deaf, and dumb. She received a paper in Harvard University. You can see she's an African American lady. And another book, Deaf Utopia, written by Niall Dedimarco, who created a proper anthem for sign language. And he really inspired me to start learning the sign language, how parents bring up such special children, how they promote these ideas in their community. Well, it's nicely described that the sign language, it's a basic language, it's not an alternative. You should not see it as something secondary. And another popular book is The Country of the Blind by Andrew Leland. And these stories, they show us so many details, even for people with disabilities.
Картинки автобиографической критики — это
Another books written by Spanish illustrator Agusti. He has a baby with Down syndrome, and the idea of this book is that you shouldn't call children with Down syndrome sunny babies, special babies. Well, this book shows that these babies are the same as the regular babies, that we should eliminate these euphemisms that we use for children with Down syndromes. I'll read these books with my children back in the class. And the last topic is transgressive resignification, but it's not that complicated. Something that was people were incognizant about, haven't known about these disabilities, or this topic was tabooed. People didn't want to discuss it with children, but now there are a lot of subcultures telling us more about disability. Well, Transgressive Resignification is a book Dorothea Redai. It's a Hungarian author, where they take old famous books such as Cinderella, Three Piglets, and many others, as many as 16 stories, and they made the protagonists with disability, apart from sexual orientation. You see, this book was a real challenge for the society, because Hungarian society was not ready to accept these books. They were destroying the bookshelves in the stores. They would threaten the authors, and then the Prime Minister of Hungary said, we won't let distribution of such books. Then they said that the transgenders, they don't have a right to adopt children. Well, you see, it was just babies' books, children's books, just to show that there are such people in our society, in our community. But surprisingly, a lot of people were damaged as a result, victimized, but the book became extremely popular and became almost a bestseller, and I hope that soon they will be normalized in our society. I'm not going to dive into details. It's Winnie the Pooh. There are a lot of different heroes in this book, but we see a person wearing a headscarf like a Muslim, or a person using wheelchair, or
Нашего общества, что они есть. Это не
or a stick, or crunches. Well, it's not books directly about disability, but it shows people with disability. Let's spend several minutes on classification. As I said earlier, books with the pictures and very few text is better for children to perceive information about disabilities. Here I want to demonstrate you classification. There are 5 different categories based on a way of representation. It's diversity of subcultures, anthropomorphism, experiencing the experience of disability, and diversity. Diversity of subcultures. There are many books that tell us a lot about alopecia, for example, or vitiligo, or excessive hairy girl. The girl is trying to disguise some of her body parts. I guess everybody knows she is becoming blind, and she's trying to remember whatever surrounds her. And I like the comics Maria. In this book, the father tells his daughter how to use communicative cards, which is very nice illustrated in this book. And one of the books in the top left corner, called 1 in 1000. It's about deformation of feet. The book tells a story about special boots that were ordered for a child because it was a necessity. Another subcategory, it's about assistive technologies, and I discovered that the most books, they describe cochlear implants, wheelchairs, or canes. They're very popular. They have a lot of comics. There are books about Braille script, about cochlear implants, about eye implants, and
инвалидности, проще говоря, как
the dog. dogs. Another is anthropomorphism of disability. Well, we try to imply this experience where we describe experience with disabilities in animals, but it cannot be implied in children's, in humans. There was a story about a bear with a colostomy bag. Of course, they do discuss those books and cases, but when we discuss it practically, how they perceive people with the same experience, they cannot relate. Another type of books is representation of voices of the authors with disabilities. When we open the books and show these pictures to children, but they see it as a fun story. They do not really recognize that it was written by a person with disability. And this gives a more clear picture to our children. And another book that became very popular last week, it's about a guy with a speech disorder. Yeah, it's about speech disorder.
And what was interesting here, when we discussed this book with children, we found out that the children find there more than the author has introduced. And tomorrow we will look at it, and there the children thought that the child feels very bad. There are some vague illustrations, and when I asked the illustrator told no, that's just the technique of drawing. And it turned out that the children feel the emotional response in the interpretation of this book. And another book that I like, What Happened to You? Why I think that this book is demonstrative for this category of books. The author, Catchpole, doesn't say what happened to his leg. He just closed his gestalt. Like, children always ask him, what happened to your leg? And he couldn't tell, and they just showed you probably sent it. You probably flushed it down to the toilet, because always the parents tell the children not to stand up on the toilet. Or probably it was beaten by the shark. But now the children, they see him, and his children, they see him, and they say how cool he is. He says, let us think about our present, let us not think about our past, about what had happened. Let's think about now. Another category of the books, these are kinesthetic books, the books with the braille, and the books for the children who do not have disability. I brought this book too. In this book it's told how the circles go out of the stone when you throw it to the water. And when you ask children, how do you think how this action can be described? It's hard to describe it, but it's quite interesting to touch it. Before the book we give the question, how do you think what the blind people see? It's dark, and they feel bad, and they start just having fun. They just but they start bullying them, and there is a negative experience. But when they start reading this book with the teacher, they answer that everyone has different world, and for some of people this world is black and or dark. And when we another category of books is the metaphor of diversity. There are quite many of books existing like this in Kyrgyzstan, for example. Mainly we use the geometrical figures to demonstrate that here is the different world, and there is a world of in form of square, and then the triangle runs, or the circle comes up, which is different from others. This literature has many difficulties described. From the point of literature, yes, they are nice, but if we want to speak about disability or somehow raise the awareness about some specific disability, the books do not work. And the last two slides that I have, that's the research that we have conducted in Kyrgyz schools. We have chosen the inclusive classes. We have both inclusive and usual, regular classes. We looked at the kindergartens and the schools. We plan to have it like 1 hour, 1.5 hours for focus groups, but it took more. And the children, they asked to take the books at home. And one of the girls, she had some disability, and she came up to me, and she brought plenty of paper. I couldn't understand her, and asked the teacher what she wanted. She asks to paint the coverages of all these books. I want my mother to buy me these books. She thought that I could draw them for like 5 minutes, all the covers of these books. And here on the photos, we see our children, like 10 to 12 children in the group. They are reading, they hold the books in their hands, which I mentioned. And I want to say that it was quite hard to find those children, because many parents refused to let their children to participate. And of course, I was very much worried about the answer of the girl, of the small girl, who said to me that it's haram to look at such people in the books or in some TikTok or in the social network. And because mom told me you will become the same if you look so much on these images. Probably mom didn't want the child to use social media so much, and she had the idea that it's illegal to watch this in disability and to see disability. We had also conduct the surveys before reading, while reading, and after reading. So we checked their knowledge before reading, then we read the books and what they and after learned what they received. Here you can see the slide where the books that were selected are demonstrated. And I would say that sometimes the authors give the right for the translation for free, but this should be legal. They should be the copyright protected, but it can be agreed always. And the last slide, which shows that the younger children of the smaller age, they do not have understanding of disability, and it's much better than at the children of the elder age, because they had problems with stereotypes, and it was quite difficult to fight those stereotypes. How can they, after 6 or 7 years, they are very open for the discussion, but when we have the 8-year-old child, he or she is full of such ideas, like with these stereotypes and etc. And children, they were telling that their father, in the Bishkek, the car stopped, the people with disabilities, they were running to crossing the road, and sometimes parents ask their children not to look on those children. They just do not explain what it is, and when the children have such problems, they may have misunderstanding of what it is. Next, we found that they're reading the books. So here we had a book about the gesture, about this sign language, and they didn't know that there is a sign language, that it's some specific signs which people make with their hands, just people having fun. They didn't understand that this is a specific language. So, and like this, we found that there are 3 categories of reactions to the books. that we have. First is the humor, when the child has something new, something interesting, the transforming one, and they were children who said that like this is a book about nothing about, and they didn't learn anything about disability. What is important? There should be the correct visualization of the person with disability, so that not necessarily a person with disability is represented there, but the other characters too. And we came to the conclusion that the books with images, they really bring big influence on children if we read them correctly. This is a really nice resource, but if you give it to the person who is not aware, then this person will recreate those stereotypes and put them into the heads of the child. Thank you very much. Is there a question from the audience? We can have only one question. Once again, hello. Can you say how did you make the quantitative selection of the participants? But I didn't hear the answer because there was no mic. Another small question can be given.
Ага, который про выборку.
So the question was about the selection of the research. Microphone, please. No mic. Microphone, please. Thank you very much. Dear participants, we would ask you for the streaming, speak to the mic, please. I think that we can complete here, and the questions can be given to Rakhat in person. We will have a small break for 30 minutes until 7 p.m. We will have 30 minutes coffee break in the courtyard, and we will go back to the streaming.
Так, прием.
So let's check when we're starting the streaming. So good evening, everyone. We're going back to the streaming. We continue talking about the representation. We will have two speakers from the USA, James Holm and Annette Miller, who are going to talk about the experience of working with the community of deaf people in the USA and how they're working in their institutions, and they will tell about their experience. Thank you very much for being here with us. I will sit back and I will continue interpreting for you too.
Hey. Hello, everyone. We are so honored to be here today and to learn together and to be sharing the work that help with identifying formation and identity. Sorry, I'm going to start over. We're excited to be sharing our work that help with identity formation in deaf and hard of hearing children and the hearing children of deaf adults, also known as CODA. And we will be sharing cases of museum projects in the USA. Thank you to the Garage Museum for hosting and organizing an incredible event so far. On the left of the slide is a picture of Joyce Holm, a deaf museum educator working within access programs at several museums in New York City, such as the Whitney, the Brooklyn Museum, and is also the senior ASL program coordinator at the Jewish Museum, the only known museum staff position in the US. My picture's on the right side, and my name is Annette Miller. I'm an artist and a teaching artist, and I'm also a very proud CODA. I have 6 deaf family members, including my mom. I work in the intersection of ASL advocacy and access to education and started ASL programs at the Drawing Center, which provides several public programs and partnerships with schools while closely working with deaf teachers. Joyce and I are also the co-founders of Lola Look, a new organization with the mission to elevate sign language programs at cultural institutions through consulting and training. Before we start, I would like to share a quick story about how Joyce and I met. When I first moved to New York, my parents came to visit me, and I looked for accessible options for us to do, one being an interpretive museum tour at a major contemporary art museum. I can't tell you about the exhibition because that wasn't very memorable. What was memorable was being the only group on the tour that needed access, always being off to the side instead of in front of the artwork, and trying to catch up with the tour guide who moved and spoke at the same time. Needless to say, my mom wasn't very interested in being at the museum, and I was very frustrated because art museums are like my church. It's where I go for inspiration, to learn, and to make sense of the world, and I really wanted to share that with my parents. On their next visit, I found an ASL tour with a deaf educator at an art institution called the Jewish Museum. We walked into not only an accessible space, but into a community space. For the first time ever, we had a cultural experience and activity together, receiving information at the exact same time. I have never experienced anything like that in my childhood or in my adult life until that moment, and I remember the exhibition and the activity profoundly well. They are now some of my most cherished memories with my parents. This is where I met Joyce. I didn't know it at the time, but this is one of Joyce's first events at the ASL as an ASL program coordinator. Though my parents went back home, I kept going back to as many ASL museum tours as I could. That day was significant for me as a CODA, not only to have an equal shared experience with my family, but for me as a person who grew up with sign language in a household and need my own community who use that language. We will be discussing our background experience working with institutions in the US, which led to a project we worked on together under our organization's name, Lola Look. Something to know is that there are 48 million deaf people in the US, and there are an estimate of 35,000 museums. However, there are only 20 museums that we know of that incorporate ASL programs or access.
Я буду рассказывать.
So I will tell about the programs of family at the different workshops, and for whom I'm going to do this: for the deaf, for those who have hearing impairment, and for CODA children, children of deaf children of hearing parents. We see now on the photo, what do we see? We see the place, the location. This is the Jewish Museum. Here is the sign language name of this museum. This building, it used to be the apartment building, and where it's located now, it's not far from Central Park. There are many different museums, and among them there is a Jewish museum. And what does it have, the Jewish Museum? There is many art, many textile expositions, and the Jewish Museum is working for all. And it looks at the history of Judaism and the traditions of Judaism. There are many programs. I want to start from that. I want to tell about the family programs that the museum provides. The family programs, why they are important? Because Jews, they value the family values a lot. It was very important, and the museum tries to consider this as their value. And what are the programs that we have? There is many about communication. We are collaborating with different artists. We invite them to the lectures, and the age of the visitors is very important, and it may be various. And the people with disabilities who visit us, they are of different age, and there are many remote lessons in Zoom, and we conduct different events in the museum and in this house too. Again, on the photo now you can see the exposition in the Jewish Museum. This is the constant exposition, and there are many colors there. 5 years ago, I started working at this Jewish Museum, and I started conducting the programs of the accessibility at the American Sixth Language. We have a couple of formats, and I'm trying to involve deaf people for coming to the programs at the American Sign Language. And how I started doing this, what was my search? 4 directions of my work. First, it is identity. What does the community of deaf want? What do they need? If we speak about identity, we see that New York has a great amount of museums, and there are plenty of family programs, but there were no family programs at the American Sign Language. And there are some schools, some communities and events, and the CODA families gather there, but there was nothing about getting them to the museum. The next is about the language. American Sign Language is at the first place in all the programs and the information that we are providing. The next point is information in New York. What are the families in New York? What do they live with? There are many parents, and there are many of them, and there are many migrants among them. And at the same time, there are many of financially stable and financially unstable people, and there are different points, the level of literacy, education, and etc. I consider these factors at this point, and there are many children who studied at the regular school. There are many mass schools in New York, and they were disaggregated. And now I see that the families and children who are communicating at the sign language, they can communicate, and I see that the child develops later. The child starts learning the sign language, and at this point, the communication with parents gets a little bit late. And if we speak about the community of deaf people in New York, we want it to be at one place, at one point, so that it gets comfortable to communicate, to talk. And that was the need. And the families also want to be next to each other. They don't want to come to the museum and just see the exhibition and then just be separated. it was important to have them together, all the members together with each other, and all the exhibitions and excursions going together. If we speak about the age from the 5 to 12 children in New York, for them there are very few programs, and I propose to do this. So let's have them together. And what did we do? We gathered the CODA children. It was important for identity, for the personality, and they felt more confident. Here we can see the image. I took it from the website, from internet. American Sign Language, from the family program on American Sign Language, as I said, from 5 to 12. There we are communicating with children too. So this is for deaf, for audibly impaired, for CODA. And together we are visiting different excursions, exhibitions, and master classes. And with this, every time we are conducting the master class together with interpretation into sign language. There is always the interpreter. Probably you see here that it's written for deaf, for CODA, for hard of hearing. Here we show that we are a diverse community. We all should be included, despite being different. And the programs, what else do we propose in the programs? We look at the exposition, at the exhibition, and then we exchange the opinions. Probably it may be a collage. If it's so, then we will make collages. And then for the time, it takes around 1 hour and a half. And at the very beginning, for 20 minutes, we look at the exposition in the shortened format. And then for 45 minutes, we are doing art. And then for 10 minutes, we start demonstrating our works and exchanging our work so that we can tell about this to everyone. So it's around 1 hour, 30 minutes for each event. Now we can see on the slide I'm working for 5 years in this area, and from the very beginning I learned different methodics, and now I have my method of work formed. And as I told, we definitely speak about the culture of deaf. We speak about the structure of the sign language and what is the structure of the work with deaf people. The foundation for our program should be based on the sign language, some unclear words. So if there is a word, we always demonstrate the image. What else? When we gather, there should be the eye contact. It's really important to establish this eye contact. And if we look at this, first we tell and then we show, so that we have one focus of visual information. This should be considered too. When we have the group work, we need everyone to be at the visual availability for everyone. Usually we sit in a circle. If we speak about the structure of sign language, if there's some unclear word for us, what do we do? What are the strategies? For example, we speak about abstraction. Of course, I explain the idea, the sense on the sign language. And then we have the abstract terms. We show this new sign and then we explain this. So there is the vocabulary work, and then we repeat this with the image. So we have the image or the photo, explanation, and we demonstrate it. The words and the signs, they are different. As we know, the word language and the sign language, they are different, and we show this difference. So the teacher and the role of the teacher. Teacher must communicate in sign language with the children. He or she must be able to use the techniques of working in the museum, and it would be great if you has a good contact with the group, because you can communicate with adults and with the children, and you can change yourself from the adult language to the child's language. And for example, it's very important to have deaf guides, because for the first year we have two wonderful teachers. We have a deaf teacher, and the second teacher is hearing. And the deaf teacher is responsible for the work, for the content, and the hearing teacher is responsible for what? He or she is conducting the master classes.
And this teacher anyway knows sign language. We never speak verbally on our lessons, but now the curricula we are doing, previously it was two people, and now I combine these two roles in one by myself. Now I want to tell you how I work with interpreters, because sign language interpreter, again, it's not just any interpreter. We have a special regulations. Interpreter is under the deaf person. I mean, deaf person is our priority. There might be some cases when person knows sign language very well, but he chooses some other way of communication. I mean, the interpreter is never the priority. He should be very careful with the ethics. He can assist. For example, I am a deaf teacher, so the translator works not next to me, but somewhere in other part of the room, because I should be the center of attention. But if you need to hear something, then the translator stands next to you and tells you being in proximity.
Кликер. Садится как будто бы. Мгм. И очень важно.
And very important to make sure that both parents of hearing impaired and healthy children are
где есть
are confident. I want to share you one story. In some families, the ties are very strong because they all know sign language, because they have some common way of communication. We are not giving order to our children to draw something, to write something, but they are communicating. For example, sister can hear and brother is hard of hearing or deaf. We can choose some games or other ways of communication in between the families. For example, CODA, they speak a lot, they have a lot of words in their vocabulary, and the translator shows the gestures, and the parents see how they communicate, and it's really interesting. I also want to say that in cultural center, this close communication that emerges in this area is wondering how you communicate with your children. You see, the communication between different parents on the premises of these specialized institutions is also crucially important that the sign language is available at schools, in other places. For example, it's regulated. It's under some rules, but in the museums there are no any restrictions and regulations and really influences on the development. Here we see that the deaf people, they see perfect examples of future work. They see that there is a deaf guy, teacher of deaf, and many other specialities he may acquire in the future.
And the following projects are with Deaf Institutes, which is a state school, and all of the students are deaf or hard of hearing. And also a bilingual public school that offers both English and sign language to the deaf, hard of hearing, CODAs, and hearing children. This is an image of the front entrance to the Drawing Center in New York. Through its program, Drawing Connections, the Drawing Center partners annually with schools to provide students with in-depth visual art experience focused on the medium of drawing. The Drawing Center has committed to offering the majority of their programs in English and Spanish. In 2021, they added American Sign Language when I joined. The Drawing Center's mission is to hyper-realize the power of drawing through exhibitions, performance, programs, and essays. Drawing Connections is led by a teaching artist such as myself, who is paired with a classroom teacher for the duration of the program. Together, they develop a curriculum that connects topics covered in the classroom with those addressed in the artworks on view at the Drawing Center. I also want to mention that I'm a working artist, and I have taught art workshops with various institutions and organizations in able-bodied spaces for almost 15 years. The opportunity to work professionally in American Sign Language is an exciting opportunity for me in my career with the language I grew up in. Because of the experience I had attending Joyce's workshop, I knew the value of having a deaf professional involved to elevate the experience, and I'm lucky to have a mentor and friend like Joyce. I'm also very grateful that the Drawing Center is supportive of including deaf educators and artists to co-create these programs with me. The first exhibition I worked on was an incredible collection of David Hammond's body prints from 1968 to 79. There are two images here. On the left is a black and white photo of David Hammond, an American artist with his shirt off in his studio, documenting how he physically prints using his body. And the image on the right is one of the results of a body print, which looks like a figure with dark skin in a white shirt and denim jeans, shining the shoes of another. Not only was the context of this exhibition an important connection to the experience of Black Americans, especially during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, but Hammond's use of his body to communicate resonated with the two classes I worked with, a 6th grade class and a 12th grade class. So this was in 2021 during the pandemic, and we worked in a hybrid way, online and in person. Here I am in this picture on Zoom in the middle top row, working with an art teacher at the Deaf Institute who is also deaf, and all of our high school students are as well. After demonstrating how to print at home using materials we supplied and dropped off to them, the students are showing off their work here. What I love about this photo particularly is one student centered on the second row is still printing with different hand shapes though class is over. But he's in that flow space of creating. He's loving the process and doesn't want to stop. Here is an image of the 6th grade class in person using materials to create their own body prints. We provided enough sessions to give them real studio time experience to allow for experimenting and play. In the image are several sheets of colorful paper on the large table with a variety of printed hand shapes in bold black. So the Hammonds exhibit was really important opportunity to discuss Black American history, such as the Civil Rights Movement, the 1992 Los Angeles riots, Black Lives Matter, and the Black Arts Movement. Approaching topics like these that have important history and cultural devastation was treated with a lot of care for each age group. Working with deaf teachers was crucial to have an understanding of where each student is at with their learning and their language knowledge. I don't try to adapt the children to what I think their grade level should be at, especially compared to hearing children. I work with other deaf teachers to better understand how to meet deaf and hard of hearing students in their individual needs. And using art to discuss subjects like history is an incredibly helpful tool for visual learners. It connects a broader topic to have visual references, especially when art has so much intentional message contained in the work. An image can often teach us language, and sign language can teach us even more about an image. The combination of visual language and visual art is an area that has energy, engagement, and insight, and it's completely underutilized. Not only are the students gaining deeper insight on the lessons that are typically discussed in school, such as history, but they are getting an inside view of an artist's studio practice of that subject. So additionally, the art materials and lessons from this series covered printmaking through body printing and relief image making, also expression and how image and language relate. This was particularly incredible to work with students as this opportunity to express and say something through a body print as sign language users produced some beautiful work. The artwork by a deaf student age 17 depicts hands praying, though cut off at the wrists as if the body is a ghost. This artwork by a deaf student, also age 17, uses fingerprints to show a crowd of people in a distance, and in front and center, a pair of arms are crossed at the wrist, which is the sign for protect. The student shared his feelings about all the protests for Black Lives Matter when creating this. And this piece by a deaf-blind student, age 11, cleverly uses the act of drawing with his print to create a rainbow. This is the sign in ASL. This is a personal favorite, as I can see so much movement and energy in this piece, as well as making the connection between drawing and language. All of the artworks were displayed in the hallway at the school, and a select few also exhibited at the Drawing Center during the annual auction, which is a nice full circle moment to see their own artwork on view at the same gallery. A family member of David Hammond's was at the event and viewed their artwork and gave high praise for adapting body printing with deaf children. When it was safer to do so, we incorporated field trips at the Drawing Center. This is often their first exposure to a museum and the importance of art outside of an art room in school. In this photo are 13 7th grade students standing in a stairwell in front of a mural by Christine Sun Kim, which was amazing to also expose children to contemporary deaf artists. This type of representation is meaningful and can make a lasting impression on children to be able to relate to an artist or artwork on view. In the main gallery was a group show. Students learned about a variety of thought pieces, such as the work by Christine Sun Kim and Hei Shengyu, in which both artists used art to share their experiences with language barriers. In this image, the students are drawing in the middle of the gallery space after receiving a guided tour of the artworks and exhibited themes. The group exhibition on view also covered global issues that they were directly experiencing and learning about themselves, such as the pandemic and isolation, and language barriers, in addition to perspective, identity, mindfulness, and connection to self. The exhibit was full of mixed media such as paint, charcoal, marker, and much more. And a lot of that work was actually quite abstract. Abstraction can generally be tough to discuss to anyone who may or may not be interested in art, especially children. But art itself is a great visual aid, and again, especially amongst visual learners. Sign language is an amazing tool to navigate things that look or feel like how they match how we're feeling or thinking, when words simply cannot. There are things in sign language that just cannot translate the same in spoken language. Joyce mentioned language deprivation, which is a huge issue in the deaf community, which they face. Sign language and art spaces are an opportunity to prevent that and expand on all the abstract ways of expressing. So here are 7 images of artworks using abstraction by students after 6 sessions together. The one in the middle is sculptural. You can kind of see the paper crinkling towards the middle as it forms into a volcano, seemingly erupting from a view of a chaotic map of the earth. Expression is such a key factor in making art, especially when you may or may not have the language to express what you want to say. Abstract art is helpful in navigating thoughts and emotions. What is significant about visual art and visual language merging together in the same space is having symbols and gestures to continue adding to what we are trying to express that has emotions and feelings. Deaf and hard of hearing children need these tools. We believe art history and art making techniques taught in sign language is significant for deaf education as a whole. And here are first grade students from the bilingual school, which uses, again, both English and American Sign Language together for deaf, hard of hearing, CODA, and also hearing students in one class. In this image, they are close to the wall looking at pen drawings of ants coming out of a large hole in the wall. The students are learning specifically about leafcutter ants through the artist Catherine Chalmers' installation work that was on view last year. Just from visiting the gallery, they learned about natural and environmental sciences, the whole ecology of leafcutter ants, as well as the geology and ecology of Costa Rica, where the artist studied colonies of ants for years. The students developed a connection to nature and exploration. The 6 to 7-year-old students got to practice life drawing, line work, and with pen and marker, collage, really working their fine motor skills. They also learned how to collaborate as well as teamwork. The students were prompted to create their own large-scale ant farm, teaching them about natural science and the hidden world of the important tiny insect. In this image, they are drawing on the floor of the museum, each working on a section of the underground farm. At a young age, it was important to introduce signs and bring visual aids such as the map of Costa Rica and videos of how the leafcutter ants cut leaves with their mouth and carry them back to their colony, in which the artist had on view at the museum. Using art to discuss school subjects is helpful for visual learners. It connects the broader topic to have a visual reference. Here's that same large-scale piece back in the classroom where the students continued working on their large-scale ant farm, then made leaves out of colorful construction paper and then cutting little pieces out to collage onto the work. And here are 2 close-up images of 6 sessions together. I love how each kid has their own personality of drawing something simple like an ant. In addition to working with deaf teachers, I noticed one exhibit in particular would benefit from a deaf artist that had the same cultural background and art practice as the artist in the next exhibit. We opened the idea of including a guest visiting artist from the deaf community, and this is utilizing and sharing community resources and expertise. Here's a picture of 12th grade students from a deaf institute with their deaf art teacher in the blue top. The woman on the left in the purple shirt is Yi Chao Wang, a deaf professor of art and design from Gallaudet University, which is about 4 hours away from New York City. She was able to visit and shared her background on traditional Chinese paper cutting, which was the main medium of the featured Chinese queer artist Xiadi. I also want to share that for me, as a CODA, I am still a hearing person and able-bodied. I'm always trying to find ways to bring in more deaf educators to co-create a curriculum with me. And I'm lucky to have a friend and collaborator and mentorship from Joyce. For those of us who are able-bodied, especially those of us who are not directly involved with their target community you are serving, but want to work in the space of access, it is critical to not only work together and learn from people with disabilities, but create more possibilities for an equal work opportunities. Those who are directly impacted by these programs are the ones who should be shaping them as well. Lola Look started from wanting to merge our expertise and our passion to elevate sign language programs at cultural institutions for deaf and hard of hearing kids, families, and adults. Our aim is to bring authentic ASL and deaf culture to elevate deaf-friendly experience, which we believe reflects in our organization's name, Lola Look, which is a play on linguistics and American Sign Language that also pays tribute to John Berger, an English art critic, and in his essay, Ways of Seeing, which is to open a new world of connecting themes and perspectives to shift our thinking. Also, the word look can be interpreted as to see, to view, to study, to focus, and also to call attention.
Мы вместе работаем.
We are working together with Nick, and we have found a small city in the US where there were no any events, and there was nothing in the sign language, and we decided to propose to continue the work in the sign language, and we initiated this idea there. This city, as I said, this was a very small city, Tusa. It has the sign language name, and we came to Tusa, and we knew very few about the context of the city. We had the research trip. We started to search the communities of deaf people, and is there anyone involved in art? And we looked at the Tusa. So when we looked at the community of Tusa, together we learned the history of art, and we prepared them for conducting the excursions. And we communicated with the museums, because museums were interested in having the programs. They wanted to develop the accessibility for the deaf people. And as soon as we found the interested museums, we were working with the museum workers on how to work with the deaf people. And after these 5 deaf people got united with the museum staff. Now you can see a girl on the photo, and I want to say that she's from Kazakhstan. For 10 years she lives in the US, and she conducts excursions on the American Sign Language. You can see that there are many deaf guys standing around, 35 people. And why was it so? We are looking at they stand like in a half circle, and it's really big group, and they were standing as in this position, and we discussed this, how to do this, and this all was reflected on the manner of how it was conducted. So 5 deaf guides whom we trained. 3 out of them, they have kids, and they are CODA. So there are 3 CODA. They can hear. And truly, there's a unique situation in that for CODA children, because children for the first time see that, wow, my parents, they work in the museum, my parents are guides, and they make the excursions in the sign language, and here the children choose the strategies. Should they do this in the sign language, or in school I'm doing this in the word language, and here in the museum I can choose. I can speak both word and sign language. And there is the interpreter, and the interpreter sometimes they ask the interpreter not to speak. Sometimes CODA children, they want either help their parents or ask to translate. So again, this family experience exchange is really important. The deaf teacher, the deaf guide, all this knowledge is transferred to children, and after children can share their knowledge between each other, and this is really impressive, and these projects can further grow. And thank you for Lolo looking.
Есть ли вопросы из зала? У нас есть.
Are there any questions? Will you do this with the voice or with the signs? Thank you very much. Really interesting. Could you give more details on the methods that you use with the children while studying the creativity or art therapy? What are the methods in that format that you use? For example, methods of Torrance, Guilford, some of them maybe. So you were saying that when you were 5, you found your own method. And that's why I wanted to ask, what was this method? Or after 5 years, so what was the method? Yeah, it was some complications with interpretation, and now I will answer. I understand your question, and I will answer. So I take the method. So I make a dictology of the last name of the Jewish museum, the method that they have developed. And this is the special showcase. But the question was in the different thing, the method of working with children.
You can translate it. So the question is about mythology. About
your methodology which you created during these 5 years.
Я надеюсь сейчас в этот раз ответить на этот вопрос.
So I hope that now I will be able to respond to your question. The main point is the fundament. The fundament of everything is the sign language. So quite a big amount of the visual images, and we are demonstrating them a lot. So this is the sign language together with the visual images. So these are not stages that go together. It goes stage by stage, and then we give questions for understanding of the family, like 3, 4 questions. What you think about this? What's your emotion? What does it cause? What's the idea? And we're talking about this, and the next is the joint result, and me as a teacher, I can add something, and here I can see if there is any understanding, and that's how I would describe this method. Did we respond to your question? So this is my method. So there is another question. I was really interested in one thing. What are the methods existing in part of teaching the audibly impaired children how to teach them paint professionally, how to teach them to develop paintings professionally. So we can say from two views here. What do I want to say? In New York, in the museums, there are family programs. If we speak about the New York Museum, there is no program for deaf people, only in Jewish Museum, and that's why these programs are only being launched. And how to launch these master classes, I'm just at the process of the beginning, of the start. I start asking, what do you need, what do you want, how I can deal with this. That's how I do this, through the feedback. That's how I form the programs, and this gives me the growth, this gives me the experience. Sometimes it happens that after my master classes, children get involved into art and they won't start learning it. But for these 5 years, I'm at the process of experimentation, and I'm trying to launch this on the constant basis to make it more professional. That's the experience that I had. It's more for now. This experience is more experimental. So it means that you're alone. Are there any colleagues with whom you're working? For now, I'm alone in New York. Yeah, I'm only one in New York who makes the family children program exactly for deaf ones. But I have the assistant, I have the co-workers, but the content of the program, how it's going to look like, this will be done only by me. Again, it's exactly for children, not for adults. The other museums, they have programs for adults, and we have the guides, the tour guides around the city guides. This all is present. May we have another question? We have the family workshops in the Home of Culture GAS 2. We are doing this for 2 years, and I'm developing programs too. But if we speak about art, that's a little bit complicated for me. All of my colleagues, they can't hear, and I would like to give the question. The audience of the deaf people is quite variated. Do you have the constant groups, or do they change? Does it happen that just the same people come to all the programs? At the first year of my work, we had a huge audience. We had many deaf people, and now parents, the hearing parents, they come, who have the deaf parents who have hearing children come, and it's all variated. They grow up, and we have the change of generations, kind of. Are there any other questions from the audience? Let's give the question, the floor to Mirsaid.
To hear your lecture. Today we talked a lot about the education of people with visual disabilities, about the problems in educational system in Uzbekistan, Russia, and other post-Soviet countries. And I think, I'm really sorry that this question is a bit about out of topic, but it's really important for our colleagues and for me to know about your experience in studying at school. Do you learn sign language at school, or your teachers require you to study verbal English or Spanish language? And how was the process of studying at your school? And I think you were graduating the university, and the studying in the university. How was the process? If it's possible, could you tell us about it?
All right, I will answer. I'm from the family of deaf people. My parents are deaf. And I'm always communicating the sign language with my family. And I studied at school. I studied at the Collegiate University. It's the university for deaf, and there is the training on how to work with the children, with teenagers. And I learned how to work in Collegiate University, and there are specific faculties and departments for this. At the university, we always used the sign language. In the Collegiate University, when I just entered there for 2 years, I studied for art, and it wasn't for me. And then I moved to the different college, and this was my first experience of working with the hearing people after college at university. How to work with the interpreter. For me, it was something new, and I learned the art a lot. And this experience was given to me by college with the hearing people. In general, the world of hearing people give me the huge experience, and I received the teaching education, and then I moved to New York. All my friends, they are deaf. They all are they're people of art, and we always exchange their opinions, and they helped us a lot. It's very good to have the soulmates, and it's important to find yourselves. And I found myself in teaching. And now I officially work at the museum. I want to say that the question was about that. Were you allowed to use the sign language at schools or no? It was quite different from the childhood. Well, when I was living next to Collegiate University, and the school was there, and we used sign language there. But in New York, there are different schools, and still there they use the word method. Slowly it is changing. It is changing gradually, but there is something like this. Half of the schools consider English word language on the first place, but some others, they consider the sign language. But I support the bilingual method. Both English and sign language should be equal. In New York, the word language prevails for now. Any other questions from the audience? So let's take the last question. Could you say, please, are there any proven methodics that are published in the articles or in publications in Scopus, for example, or in other platforms which we can look at?
And unfortunately, no, because a lot of effort has been put into law, medical, other areas of expertise to put research in, and not necessarily art. Art is very overlooked, which is unfortunate because it's a very powerful tool, as I said, for visual learners, and it's a great visual aid. But that's actually one of the reasons why Joyce and I decided to work on Look, because we want to kind of start creating this data, getting feedback from the community, having more focus groups that don't really happen for the deaf community in art spaces. So that is something that we're trying to work on, because there's currently, unfortunately, no data that we know of.
Еще хочется.
So I would like to add, when we were developing our organization, Look, there was a huge aim, the huge goal. It was to join and to find the research, how many accessible spaces, accessible environments for the deaf people in the US. could we develop the statistics, and then together with this we will be able to calculate everything, and this is the plan for us to start some research for the methodics and for the statistics and numeric data. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I think that we can complete this part. We will have the chance to see each other and to chat in the informal format space.
Good evening. Hi, hello.
Можем начинать.
Всем добрый вечер. Меня зовут Лиза Михайлова.
Hello, my name is Liza Mikhailova. I'm very proud that we are still here. Thank you for staying. I personally want to say I have sensor overloading. I'm so tired. I guess you too. Let's have a light discussion. Our today's topic is about speaking, about chatting. I want to divide my speech into two parts. I want to tell about my program, and then I want to ask you about your experience or your recommendations and about how you create your projects. My today's presentation is called Art Club for Young People in Museum. I'm the curator of educational projects in sphere of culture, and now I have my own agency. It's called Liza Arthur NL. I conduct tours and workshops for children and mediation for adults in different museums in Amsterdam. I graduated Stockholm University, and I've been always specializing on educational directions. And previously, I worked in a museum of Russian Impressionism in Moscow, and today I want to tell you about a program that was designed not for a particular museum but for the Museum of Arts overall. But now you see it's applicable in Cobra Museum in Netherlands. I'm not representing this museum today. I work as an invited curator of this particular program. The idea of the program is an art club which was created for neurodiverse people from 18 to 26, but it's just relative numbers. It really depends on applications we receive. And this program was written in English. I translated it specially for the conference, and maybe it's incorrect. I mostly work in English language, so there could be some discrepancy. Some people say club, some people choose another definitions. Some young people are interested in different creative practices, and they meet people with a similar interests and got to know more about professional development in arts. As the aim of the program, there are several, and one of the main is to support young artists with neurodiversities, to give them opportunity to meet art mediums. So it's what I noticed in my work. It doesn't focus only on art or pictures. It's very diverse. Contemporary art is very diverse. So many formats that I wanted to expand the scopes of the museum, plus to give professional consultations if necessary. Very often such programs, they say that we gathered only to get some fun and pleasure, but for me it's important to add the professional community here. This program will create an area where young artists will meet one another and create their own community or expand some existing ones. Another idea is to unite neurotypical and neurodiverse artists.
Да, про участников.
About the visitors and participants, we hope that this program will cover 10 people in the beginning. And of course, I'd like to include as many participants as I can, what mediums they're interested in, or they want to invite particular artists. And apart from group meetings, they maybe could have a dual practices in museum workshops. So we are developing a curricula for every participant based on his or her interests. We discussed several principles today. That's why here it was very important for me to speak to communities in Netherlands. I myself, I'm a neurodiverse artist, but I'm not in that age group, so that's why I attracted other people. There were no relevant groups for myself, but there are some foundations and schools or some parents' communities which is involved in this activity, and as a partner we are inviting several social institutions. Even right now I'm leading a dialogue with them, and I hope that our cooperation will be fruitful.
Да, я немножко уже рассказала о структуре, здесь более подробно.
Now I want to elaborate more about independent work in the workshop area. Not always young people have an opportunity to purchase the materials, or they don't have enough space at home, so museum can become the museum Cobra is closed every Monday for school groups, and we decided to make use of this time for young artists. We also have an idea to have more group works. So we have both group and individual consultations with curators, focusing on practicing artists and visiting their studios and workshops if there is such an opportunity. It can be illustrators, designers, not only artists. I don't want to narrow down the scope, plus attending exhibitions. If we already have the area in the museum, will dedicate exhibition to museum, but we can travel in Amsterdam and adherent territories. Here is an example of the plan of our meeting. We wanted to invite traditional mediums such as fine arts. It's and as a second meeting, we wanted to dedicate to an artist from Amstelveen, Wembo. The museum works in a particular municipality. They have their own restrictions and regulations. So interaction with artists from this region. And Amstelveen is 10 minutes from Amsterdam border. So it's like suburban of Amsterdam. Well, it's other area. For them it's important. They want to develop their studios and their artists. So we decided to give floor to the artist so that he can present himself, conduct Q&A, and then conduct a small workshop of this artist. Some peculiarities which he or she or they will underline. Again, I want to highlight to have a Q&A session and give an opportunity for participants to look at the works of one another. A similar meeting, number 3, was conducted in museum workshop. Here we decided to make to highlight informal sphere of pedagogy. Of course, we compare it with the classical one. We looked at radical and alternative methods, mediation, and my idea was to discuss several artworks and then give opportunity to visitors to choose something for themselves as a source of inspiration. Work in a studio, to have a studio workshop where the participants can create their own artworks and make them the part of their practice. It's just a plan. Many things may change. It really depends on who is the participant, if they want to interact with us. Another example is meeting with the contemporary photographers. We invited a contemporary photographer from Amstelveen, Maurice Faber. We really wanted to work with the local context, and we asked him to present his photo gallery, how to put the light, the shade, how to work with the camera, how do portrait shooting, and how to position and present yourself on social media. And he has a brilliant experience in this regard. I also want to mention that this list of invited artists was quite long. We wanted to make 50-50 and invite neurotypical and neurodiverse artists to these workshops. Here in the beginning we had an impulse why I decided to create this program. I listed a number of reasons. Is that the museum is detached from artists, from the creators of the artwork. Well, I have this feeling, especially when you are not a professional artist, when you are just a beginner, if you are a neurodiverse artist, or well, using my own experience, I can say that when I was studying in Russia, it was very hard to me to become a part of classical system of education. They were teaching academic painting. I couldn't get concentrated. I wanted to work in my own style. I had no space for myself. That's why I failed to enter art academy. In Netherlands, the situation is very different. For Academy of Arts, you don't need to submit some classical artwork, but there are some other difficulties. Well, the school system is about thinking if you are going to go to university further after 12 years of education. Well, after 12 years, it's very difficult to decide, and then your whole life is really depends on the choice, on decision you make, and then you need to do advanced training, retraining. There are some specialized classes inside the schools in Netherlands for neurodiverse people, or there are special schools. They're not called specialized, they have some Netherlands name. Well, you as a student are not going to university. In some schools, they already choose for you the professions, the major you may have. For example, you can become only a chef or some assistant, very restricted. There is a chance to enter supreme school. It differs from university. You don't need to prepare that thoroughly. But it's also accepted in professional community. But if you come without preliminary preparation, it's very difficult to get there without theoretical baselines, since the teachers always make citations of some prominent people. So I believe that the museum can become a place where people with formal and informal education can work together and share their best practices, or maybe change something in a classical understanding of people's choice. Another reason why I wanted to create this program is that in contemporary art is always perceived as something foolish, and there is a division, subdivisions like contemporary art and some outsiders. It's interesting that in some museums they make a special exhibition for outsiders' art, but sometimes it creates a sort of strong segregation and stigmatization. Well, overall, I have a feeling that there is a lack of supporting programs inside the art museums itself, where I wanted to be 10 years ago. I'm a neurodiverse person. Then I want to make a review of the context. I work in Netherlands, especially Amsterdam and adjacent territories. It's called Big Amsterdam. Here I included examples from different years. It's a Central Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Presents a collection of Netherlands arts of medieval to the end of 19th century. Here we have a program called Special Attention for children with special needs. But actually it's the only program. It's a private tour that you can hire. There is a guide who can make a tour for you and your family. It really focuses on kids and families. They don't work with the teenagers.
So there are also such sensor-friendly evenings for families where the sensor noise and the sensor load is minimal. These are 2 evenings a year when you can visit the museum directly for this. Another project that is somehow related to the mental health is the program Unforgettable for people with dementia and their families and relatives. And this is outside my specialty, but I just wanted to say that such program exists. Here you can see the list of museums which participate in it. These are main museums of Amsterdam. They are from my part. The Stedelijk Museum, they stopped participating in this program. And the Central Museum of Utrecht. Another example is the work of our center as Isamatic. I'm communicating a lot with them. It is A/artist project. So A/artist. It's about diversity in art. It's the real big platform where they are in interviews with artists with neurodiversities, and they visit museums and they conduct public talks and they have joint master classes. This is a really nice example of communication with the art neurodiverse community, but here we have the adult artists, and we hope to invite the different artists to visit us. Another platform is the Museum of Sense, or Museum of Reason. So in Dutch it sounds much better. If you translate it, it's like Museum of Soul, but the official name in English is Museum of Mind. I think you can understand yourselves the translation. So they are located in Haarlem. Haarlem is their main center. They have quite interesting history because the building is the previous psychiatric asylum, and what they say that they work with the mental health and in the different forms. They work with the doctors, with the medical staff who cooperate somehow with the people with mental diversities, and they also work with the neurodiverse artists. So they have the specific part, the Museum of Outsider Art, where they demonstrate only the artists with the neurodiversities from different periods, from the previous and from the current one, and they have separate studios for the artists who are working today, which they can visit, and there they can work with the teachers and artists and volunteers. So the studio is located in the building above, and below there is a gallery where these artists who participate in the work of studio can sell their works, and constantly there are the exhibitions. I am in the dialogue with them too. Probably we will have the joint program, maybe something what I do now at the Cobra Museum, because again there is a big separation between the so-called artists of outsider art and the general field of the art. From one hand, it's great, they are in the focus, there is a huge space for them, but on the other hand, I feel there is a division. For example, it's hard for me to identify where to go. For me, it would be great if these worlds can merge. Then next, we have enough time, I guess. I decided to allocate time to speak about the weaknesses, about the problems. I know that you have the experience of such programs, maybe some options or variants for continuing these programs, or how to communicate with the communities. For me, this community is new. I live in Netherlands and live there just for 18 months, and I'm just getting introduced into this society. I had the experience of working with different societies in Moscow, and in that path, for me, probably it was difficult that most often the programs were pre-written by the teachers, and they were not flexible, and most often they were related to specific exhibition and to some setup of exhibits. And here I would love to change it, depending on who will be the participants, what will be their own opinions, desires, and strivings, and to see what their styles are, and to see which professional consultations they need, if they need them. And I think it's one of the formats which can be considered as informal in teaching, and it's not inbuilt into the classic system of education. And I wanted to ask you, what are the formats that you work with? And partially I've heard some of them, but I would like to learn about them from you. And also briefly, I wanted to say, for me, the creation of any program, what serves as foundation for me, and I think that for most of us too. And if we have some time, maybe I would propose to some of you who are now thinking about the program or just developing it, maybe they need the answers to these questions, what you would like to propose. For me, I answer that I don't feel that we have enough community inside the museum, because now I feel comfortable that I worked for some time in the museum myself. But if I come there now, I think that it would be not comfortable for me, because to most of the museums I come for the first time, and very often I get frightened. Is there the needed platform for your idea in your organization, or maybe some other organization, or the organization of some people you know? If there is any like this, maybe you can do this yourselves. I had the idea to get this connected with the museum. I needed some institutional support, because we need to have the constant facilities where we can control the sensor load, and we need special days where we have less visitors, where our group could have lessons. When I was looking for the platform, I was looking for many museums where we could work, and I think that we always can find such space. I just mailed the 50 different museums, and with some of them we had the meetings, and only with 2 of them our visions coincided. I think it's about not giving up and having the soulmates always. And then the idea, who can help you, where you can find the so people with the same thinking, and how you can get communicated. The next question is the question of financing. I guess it's the most painful thing. For example, why my project didn't complete or didn't win. It's quite a long and complicated process. For example, we applied and we will have to wait for 4 months. For the approval, but sometimes maybe we don't need such a big financing, and we realize that many materials can be donated and many artists are ready to work with us. Yeah, no, I don't mean that the artists should work for free. All the labor of the artists and the curators, it should be paid. Here I'm not an expert. That's why always I'm using the advice. These are social media, schools, and etc. I was so Julia was talking about flyers, and in Netherlands it works with everything. Flyers are about everything, and posters are about everything. That's why I think we should remember about some main points. That's all that I wanted to tell. Maybe I would go back a slide back. If you have any recommendations, feedback, or your own stories, I would love to hear them. Please share if you have any. Thank you very much. So we are moving to the Q&A. I would like to give you a question, Елизавета. Could you tell what is the methodology for studying art therapy for the people who are neurodiverse, and most often what are the types of art that you teach or that you are involved in? Thank you for your question. Here I do not propose art therapy as a method. I propose the interaction with different modern artists and communication with them, and through this communication to make an attempt to know each other, to learn about the creative practices that we have. And here the participants, they are artists and creators, and many of them have some practice and their style, and or maybe they are searching for it. So here is it's more like a dialogue and knowing each other, knowing the practice of each other. That's why I wouldn't say that this is art therapy, but then on the methods that I use. We mentioned the pedagogy of defeated, or the pedagogy of the depressed. It's when the pedagogy shouldn't be static, and that the teacher and the student should play the same role. Here I will not speak as a teacher. Here I will speak as an assistant, as a companion or a curator who can give some recommendations. And in the center they will be the young artists and the invited artists too. I'm involved in art and I work in contemporary and illustrations. Thank you very much. I would like to give a question under the fund. We have the organization that's called the Academy Samarkand Marathon. We have a goal of helping in socialization of neurodiverse children and their inclusion into the society. And the problem of Uzbek society is that the parents of neurodiverse children, they are not ready to socialize their children. This problem exists in Russia too, but it's even worse there. Based on your experience, probably more in Russia, how did you get socialized into the society? As you said that you have the neurodiversity. I do not have neurodiversity, but I have the physical disability. How do we need the experience of interaction here? Do we need also to have the neurodiversity while developing some projects? Because my problem and problem of fund is in that now we have we do not have the content, the contact that we would love to have with the community and society, because the parents of diverse children, they are not ready to get their children socialized. How did you face this problem in Russia and how it was resolved? Thank you for your question. Yes, I faced this issue. I guess here I can say that yes, we had something like this when your parents want to protect you. They want to protect you a lot from the environment and from the world around you, and they see how it reacts, and it's quite often it's very aggressive, and sometimes they overprotect. And now when I'm working with neurodiverse teenagers, I see this. I think that when we have the experience, and my personal experience is helping, as I can imagine what these young people are going through. That's why I think that such program is needed based on my personal experience, based on what I see in the context of Netherlands, and how to work with the parents in this regard. I think that such programs, the museum programs and the programs in the libraries, they are helping, because based on my experience in Russia, when the parents came and when they saw that the museum and the museum specialists, and when they saw museum as institution, when they saw that they are open and they want to create a comfortable space, they are teaching their visitors, they tell, they inform, and the parents start trusting more to the institution and to the special to the workers, and they start coming just to the museum and leaving their children there, where they can work without the participation of children. I think it's not the final solution, but it's one of the ways. I would like to wish you all the success, and I hope that sometime after I will hear about the experience. I have some ideas about the difficulties with inviting the artists. I do not have experience with the artists from Holland, but I have the experience with the Russian ones, when there are some specificities with the expression and etc. When they use some complicated language for expression, will there be some stage or pre-interview and agreement with the artists? Did you think about this? Because there can be some underwater stones. Yes, we constantly think about this, how to unite two worlds to make everyone comfortable. With those artists with whom I communicate, they conducted the meetings where we explained how they are going to work, what are the programs and what are the goals and what can be the difficulties on how to build the communication. And I think that closer to the program we will have the test run with me or with several people from the colleagues, and the half of the artists invited there are the artists with the neuro diversities, and most of them teach, so they understand the needs of the similar audiences. But thank you, it's true, truly these may be the hardships and difficulties, and I hope that the artists will not tell just for 30 minutes about their photos, and this will be in a different format.
We have a lot of questions in YouTube. I'll read a couple of them, and we have in the room several questions. Where are you taking the budget from the program? When the program starting? How many meetings are you planning? And does curator receive any payments for this program? I love questions about money because it's important. Now we are in a process of submitting application for grant. It's called Culture and Participation Foundation. They have several tracks. One of them is young people and mental health. It's quite extensive. You can apply if you have a culture sector, or if you work with somebody from social sector, or vice versa. They have several more examples. If you're in Netherlands, please look. There is a VSB Foundation. They support different initiatives in culture, and it's directed on including young people and people in general. Not separated from the art, where the people in the art are not separated. The program is lasting 3 months, and the beginning is scheduled to the beginning of September. It was about curators' wages. Question. In the beginning, I wanted even to refuse curator wages because I really wanted to implement this program, but now yes, it's defined, and the number of meetings, and I haven't written down the exact number of meetings, but we meet every 2 weeks. So it's 15 meetings, I guess, and the final part is exhibition or some general presentation of the project, because in museum there is such a space that they allowed us to use it to do the presentation. This is all for YouTube. Now I see hands in the audience.
Я просто хотела поблагодарить Лизу.
I just wanted to thank Liza. Thank you, everybody. It was the first day of the conference. Hooray! Well, see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. If you are looking streaming, it's 8 a.m. Moscow time. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.